People who identify as spiritually non-human or as an animal spirit or as anything like that are hated not because their experience of their own existence is wrong, because there's no way for anyone else to be able to determine the validity of another entity's experience of their own existence, but because the very idea that there could be human people who internally live their day-to-day life in a different than human way by their definitions is so shockingly uncomfortable, it immediately triggers the people around them and makes those people want to shut them down or shut them up or hide them. We believe that most of the people who identify as spiritually non-human are the same as we are just disabled people who are viewing their disability through a different lens, and that the hate for these people is actually is not about, is, as with most things, not about the people at all, but is about how their existence falls outside of what is socially acceptable and what is believed. We live in a time period that just the belief in spirits in and of itself is considered illogical and ridiculous. And so, unfortunately, if you are someone like me, where you're a wizard, where you do believe in spirits, and where maybe your magic is a way of explaining and expressing things that the medical industry or other systems have completely and wholly failed you in. But if you tell people that you are a fantasy creature and that's how you see yourself, and that's how, or you have body dysmorphia for that, well, they get to just say that you're crazy and delusional and whatever else, as if you don't have to grapple with that every day, as if you're unaware, as if they know your brain more than you know it, as if they know your experiences better than you know it, when they don't know anything about you at all other than that difference. And then there's people who say, oh, well, it's just psychosis, right? You're just psychotic, And it's like, one of us started to believe it, because there was a period where, we used to be an atheist, right? We used to be an atheist for 20 years. We were an atheist and a skeptic and all of these other things, right? And it was more about image than anything else, right? It wasn't what was right for us. It didn't feel good in our hearts, but it was because we were raised to be that way, so it's all we knew. And when we were really little, like 6 and younger, I think we were raised Christian. And then after that point, we were raised as an atheist. Now that we're an adult, we are theistic, and our faith is fully self-invented, and is contingent on our own psychology. And we don't deny any of that, but we think it's rather sad that we live in a world that can't even consider why some people might not want to identify as human, that can't even fathom why. Because here's why. A lot of the people who see themselves as non-human, it's because they were hurt as a child very, very deeply. And it's not always this. There's people for whom this does not apply. But if the people you're born into no matter what you do anyway, hate you. And you can feel that they hate you, even if they say other things, right? You can feel that you are different to them. And let's say there's an animal in your life, or maybe a fictional character, or maybe a story. And when you're around this thing, you can escape from that pain. Maybe you have a particular animal or a pet that when you're with this animal, you're safe and you feel safe. That could be something that later in life would cause someone to see themselves as closer to that animal or that character or that story, whatever it is, than to the people around them, because they weren't safe and still aren't really safe around the people they were born among. But they can find relief in those other things. And when that part of them comes out, they can have some semblance of relief that everyone around them already has. And I think the real reason people hate people who don't spiritually see themselves as fully human is because accepting them and accepting the possibility of the validity of their experiences would require people to face what kind of pain the systems we live in are putting people under, that the only way those people feel they can escape that pain is to let those humans who hurt them win by taking their humanity away. Because what does it really mean to be human? Right? It's more than just how you look. It's more than something in your brain. What is that? Right? Obviously, physically, I'm human. Genetically, I'm human. I bleed like a human. I know I'm human. But I know that inside I'm more than human. And for me, it's DID, right? It's dissociative identity disorder. That's the disability way of looking at it, right? But it's so much more than that. And I remember even before I knew that I was transgender, that I had a friend who was getting really, really angry and heated and talking about how horrible and awful and villainous and wicked these otherkin are, right? They were telling me about it. And I remember thinking at the time something like, well, I've never met someone like that, so I don't really know how I feel about that. But I just kind of went along and said, yeah, that's really horrible if they're. Because they said something like the most extreme example they could imagine, right? Like, on these people who think they're animals, they want to get rights to, like, poop wherever they want, just like an animal or something like that, right? And I said, oh, that's really horrible, and yeah, they shouldn't be comparing that to being trans, right? Because that's nothing like that. And then, after I realized that I was trans, and after I realized a bit later that I have DID, and I didn't know it was DID at first. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. I just knew that all these spirits were visiting me, right? And it turns out they weren't visiting me, it was me visiting myself, right? And it's like, the reality is, people see something different to themselves, no matter what it is, and they see it as a threat, and they're going to find the most extreme, ridiculous example they can and say, see this, these others, this is what they're like, this is what these others are like, for the entirety of a group that they're not even a part of. And I'm done with all that. Like, I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, I have autism, I have these things diagnosed, I know my own disabilities, and I know my own mind, but more than anyone else can possibly know it because it's my life, right? And I'm tired of being made to believe that I'm less intelligent, that I'm less of a person, that I'm not deserving of human rights. Because one of my alters, the one that feels the most non-human, I know in my case, the reason they feel that way and the reason they present that way is because they literally feel like their humanity was stolen from them. Because it kind of was. If you're abused for long enough, you stop wanting to be a part of humanity. You stop wanting anything to do with anything that reminds you of that pain. And so for him, his way of handling that is that he doesn't see himself as human. He sees himself as an angel or a demon or both. And before that, he saw himself as a robot, right? And everything he's been has been directly tied to the pain he went through and the childhood trauma he went through, that part of me went through. So I don't have a problem with people who don't see themselves as fully human, because I am a part of those people, and those people are a part of me. And I think the real thing here is actually the same thing that causes people, that it is the same thing that causes people to hate me for being autistic, or causes people to hate me for being transgender, or causes people to hate me for any other of the things that outcast me, because it's not about any of these differences. It's about I exist in a way that I can't help, that I can't control, that I didn't choose, that fundamentally lies outside of their understanding of reality, that fundamentally doesn't fit in to their understanding of how the world works. And because I fit outside of that, I'm a threat to their understanding. And so they accuse me of not understanding, they accuse me of not existing, and they accuse me of everything else under the sun, and push us to the brink of utmost despair, because the idea that because the truth is more painful, because it's easier to make someone else hurt so badly, they stop being human entirely, than it is to face your own shadow for these people, to face what they might be hiding, to answer why it bothers them. Because here's the thing, hatred comes from ignorance and fear, but when you understand why you're afraid of something, it often stops being scary entirely. And I'm not threatened at all by whether they be spirits or people who feel spiritually different or feel that their sense of personhood is not entirely human. I'm not threatened by them at all, because I'm a part of them. And I'm tired of feeling like I have to hide every single part of my life just because it makes other people afraid and uncomfortable and resentful. But I'm also finding that even though we did hide ourselves for 20 years, we hid to survive the abuse of... Not going to talk about that. Don't talk about that. But even though we're no longer in an abusive upbringing, we are still constantly reminded that we don't fit in, that we can't fit in, and that normalcy is a luxury we cannot afford. Whether it is because we are gender diverse or neurodiverse or multiple, plural, or any other thing, doesn't change the essence, because the essence is that we don't fit the system. We don't fit into what people have decided is socially acceptable, what people have decided makes someone human, or makes someone a real enough man, or makes someone any of these other things. And the thing is, what happens when you listen to that, right? When you actually believe it and internalize it, it just makes you hate yourself and want to die. And we did for 20 years. We fucking hated ourselves so much, we literally lived as the lie they told us we were. We lived as a person that was a ghost in a shell for our former tormentors because we thought the alternative was death, and we thought that was the only possible way we could survive, was to pretend to be someone we weren't. And so when people see us now and they see that we openly often identify as non-humans, depending on who's fronting, that leads to further ostracization and further oppressive behavior, because they can't see the bigger picture. And yet they're always going to accuse us of, the fucking, our ex best friend or whatever, she said, don't go there. Try and not trigger your PTSD, please. I don't want to spiral. It's hard. Okay, it's hard. And these people that we want to make fun of because they're, you know, easy fruit, right? They're easy, bottom of the barrel stuff. Keep in mind that you have no idea what someone else is going through. And we want to make fun of people because it makes us feel superior, because it scratches some itch, it gives us some sense of power, right? I'm not better than anyone else, any of these fucking people. And I think the men who pretend to be, and the men who take one look at a guy like me and decide we don't exist, right? And tell us that it's like, oh, you can't identify as the thing that you believe you are. And it's like, because they don't understand, and they don't want to understand, and they just want to hurt, and they want it to go away. And it's not going to go away, because the reality is, no matter what terms you're using, whatever you're calling it, these lived experiences have existed for as long as there's been people, and they're going to continue to exist because, contradictorily enough, it's a part of being human. There are always going to be people who don't fit into the current time period's understanding of what is socially acceptable and normal and true and correct and right or whatever else. But the people trying the most to be good and to appear that way to the outside are just as capable of destroying and giving into their shadow as anyone else.